Throughout the mortal realms, the green-skinned Uruks are feared for their ferocity and their strength, and are typically the first to pop into people's heads when they are told the forces of destruction are marching towards them. There is another type of greenskin, however, smaller and weaker than the Uruk, but much more cunning. Hiding in the dank and foul caverns and caves of the mortal realms, awaiting their signal to emerge and attack, lie the Gloomspite Gitz. Worshippers of the bad moon, the Gloomspite Gitz come out of hiding under its light, revealing the horde of goblins, squigs, and other nasties that scurry around in the dark recesses of the mortal realms. Nowhere near as physically impressive as an Uruk, a Git stands about chest height, but often appears smaller due to their typically terrible posture. Clad in black robes, wielding a mishmash of various stolen knives and other stabby things, the swarms of Gits that emerge would seem somewhat comical if not for the murderous glee in their faces. Where the Grots lack in brawn, they make up for it in cunning, with each little green schemer generating their own plan for bringing surprise destruction to their enemies. When the Gloomspite Gitz march out to war, they do so with erratic and often self-destructive methodology, yet never failing to bring devastation to their intended targets. Grots particularly can be a vicious component to a Git mob, with these little goblins having a cruel streak a mile wide, and their stabby nature and vindictiveness making up for their lack of courage, honour, compassion, and table manners. The forces of the Gloomspite are not just restricted to goblins, however, with all manner of strange and wonderfully killy creatures residing alongside them in their hovels. The cutest and most bitey of the bunch are the well-beloved squigs. Coming in sizes big and small, winged and hoppy, the squigs of the Gloomspite Gitz are not only the cutest monsters that they share a cave with, but they're also the most bizarre. Basically giant balls with even bigger sets of teeth, the cave squigs possess two powerful legs that they use to propel themselves around in bounding leaps. Raised by the Grots as both a food source and a war asset, these monsters take to the battlefield in a chaotic nature that makes the Grot riding a mushroom into battle seem very reasonable. Seemingly as likely to eat their own handlers as they are the enemy's troops, herds of squigs are poked and prodded towards their foe, and provoked into a rage whilst pointed in the right direction. This near-suicidal job does come with a high Grot mortality rate, but the results of a herd of enraged squigs charging an enemy line is worth the sacrifice, at least according to the loon boss commanding the troops. Some of his squig herders may die, but it's a sacrifice he is willing to make. At some point in the history of the Gloomspite, one plucky Grot thought it would be a good idea to try and mount a squig. Many attempts and eaten Grots later, and the success rate has increased to slightly more viable chances. Clinging on tightly for long enough to survive the charge into the fray, these squig hoppers ride into battle as a close approximation of squiggy cavalry. Seen as figures of awe by the general populace of the Grots, these squig hoppers will happily regale tales of their mounted exploits and victories to any who will listen, almost always making these stories up on the spot, having spent the battle putting all of their attention into just holding on to their squig mount to have done anything worth regaling. When these mad Grots gang together and ride out as a mass of screaming squiggy death, the destruction they can cause is an inspiration to the followers of the Bad Moon. Should these riders survive a few battles, the luck of it goes to their heads. Clearly, they are a skilled knight of the squig and armour themselves to fit the part with makeshift plate. Forming their elitist bands of Boingrot bounders, they wield lances into battle, their experience with squig riding allowing them to at least aim these large prodders in the right general direction as the balls of teeth beneath them charge all over the place, crashing into the enemy lines like metal-cladded fungal meteors. For those who even the Boingrots would call crazy, there is the challenge that comes from the giant cave squigs. These beasts grow too large to practically ride or herd into battle, and so the Gloomspite do the only reasonable thing. They lash 2 of them together with great chains and try to point them in the right direction. These makeshift wrecking balls push and pull on each other as they thrash towards their intended targets. The poor grots atop them, doing their best to steer the mess of squig beneath them. Should they collide with the enemy, these conjoined titans can lay waste to entire sections of an army, demolishing troops and siege weapons alike with an avalanche of flesh. Even as they are taken down by those they fight, the death throes of these mangler squigs have been known to break down walls and wreak havoc before they finally come to a stop. Now take the image of squig and grot carnage that we've already built and throw in the multi-limbed mess of the spider god's brood. Grots that worship the spider god, they ride into battle atop giant 8-legged beasts, their fangs dripping with venom. From the scuttlebosses leading their raiding parties, to the apex predators of the Arachnarok spiders, these web spinners are dangerous hunters and protectors of the Danklands. Slowly spreading out their dark and spore-filled ecosystems, the followers of the spider god scuttle to war when they are called to action by the light of the bad moon, crushing their enemies under 8 powerful limbs and using their venoms and magic to bring pain and destruction to their enemy forces. To make up for the lack of pure muscle in their little goblin bodies, the Gitz call upon the hulking and hungry Troggoths of the realms to enact the will of the Bad Moon. These brutes adapt to their environments, and many subspecies of Trogg exist throughout the realms, from the gloomy cavern-dwelling Dankholds to the deep marsh-diving fell-water Troggoths, the unifying factor between them all being their ability for unleashing great destruction around them and their unending appetite for just one more tasty bite. While these Trogs do make for great muscle power for the Gloomspite Gitz, the Grots know to stay weary of these allies, should their appetites switch from man-flesh to something slightly more green and bite-sized. All of this destruction and madness is brought about by the rising of the Bad Moon. None truly know the origin of the gleaming, smiling planetoid that appears in the skies of the mortal realms, although some believe it to be formed from the spirits of dead goblin shamans. Another theory, which I much more prefer, is that the great god Gorka Morka once attempted to take a bite out of a rock that he saw floating in the sky. When he climbed a volcano and reached up to the sky to take a bite from the stone, his teeth chipped against the impenetrable rock, and he recoiled from the task. Some say though that this bite imbued the stone with the god's might, and so his magic shines forth from it to this day. Whatever the reason for its origins, however, its cause is much better understood. As the light of the Bad Moon passes over a land, the followers of this moon feel a mania wash over them and are compelled to charge forwards, losing their fears and instead screaming shrill battle cries from frothing mouths as they succumb to the madness that the Bad Moon brings. Boss Grots feel the clammy hand of the moon upon them, swearing to hear its voice in their heads, telling them to teach the surface Gitz a lesson. Under the light of the moon, a Grot believes that there is nothing they can't do. It's not just the Gitz, however, that lose themselves to the light of the Bad Moon, with even the strongest minds being at risk when bathed in the glow of lunacy emanating from the Bad Moon. Falling to its lure, they begin to rave, spouting proclamations in dead languages, or singing lost ballads from the Age of Myth. Where this forgotten knowledge comes from is unknown, and is attributed to just another quirk of the abstract nature that the moon's presence brings. The Bad Moon does not hang about, however, with only the greatest displays of destruction holding its attention for any long period of time. Otherwise, it travels across the mortal realms, hurtling through the etheric void, gleefully smashing into other astronomical bodies and careering around the realms like a pinball. Whatever the flavour of Gloomspite fanatic that you find yourself on the receiving end of, for any denizen of the mortal realms, the best advice is to hide when the light of the Bad Moon is shining over your home. If you're unfortunate enough to be one of the warriors set to defend against the raving hordes of moon-crazed Gitz, Your best bet is to dig in deep and ready yourself for the unexpected. Lucky are those who are not overrun by the manic mix of trogs, squigs, spiders and goblins when the dank light of the bad moon blots out the sun. If you've enjoyed our visit to the Gloomspite and don't want to miss any more goblin content, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us to continue what we're doing. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.